everyone. So last time we've tackled about the definitions of operations, definition of operations management, and also supply chain. We tackled all about those things, the foundation or the introduction to operations management. We are still in chapter 1 and masyadong marami pa yung chapter 1, so just bear with me. And kahit na medyo marami to, but it's okay kasi it's fundamentals naman and kailangan meron tayong strong background of what operations management is before we proceed to other parts of the course or the subject. Okay? Now, just to have a recap on what operations is. The operations function consists of all activities directly to producing goods or providing services. So in conclusion to what operations mean, kasi it's about production, right? It's about manufacturing, about processes, okay? So it's about it is all about the activities directly related to producing goods or providing services. Okay, so that's clear to us. That's the function of operations. Now, what about operations management? So operations management is the management of systems or processes that create goods and provide services. The systems that is being used, the systems that are being used in operations and the management of that system is what we call the operations management. Okay? Once again, magkaiba yung operations sa operations management. Operations are activities, okay? The activities involved in producing or providing services, producing goods or providing services. Operations management, on the other hand, although interrelated sila, but operations management is about management of the system of that activities. Okay? So, klaro sa atin yon. Now, let's proceed with this part. Okay? So, supposedly, last meeting natin ito siya natakel. Supposedly, natakel na dapat natin to. But because of some connectivity issues, okay, yung pahirapan sa Google Meet, so I decided na ngayon na lang, and this is a pre-record video. Now, why learn operations management? So basically, why are you enrolled in this kind of subject? So regardless of kung ano yung major natin, I a major in marketing, others your schoolmates are major in finance, major in HRM or human resource management, and you are accounting students. Okay, so regardless of what field you are in, it is important to learn about operations management. Why? So long as you are involved in business organizations, you need to have that knowledge or background of what is happening, of what operations is all about, okay? Or how businesses operate. Because these are the things that employers are looking into, okay? The knowledge of their employees or their potential employees. So if you have a background about operations, you might have an advantage, okay, with regards to that. And of course, when you are already into that job, for example, finance or in marketing, those elements are interconnected, okay? So they need to have knowledge of for example, they need to have, if you are in finance, you need to have knowledge in marketing and in operation, especially in operation. Same as if you're marketing, you need to have that knowledge or background or information on finance and operations aspect. So through learning about operations and supply chains, you will have a much better understanding of the world you live, the global independencies of companies and nations. Okay? So this world that we are living are being run by organizations, being run by multinational companies, big companies, okay? So, in order for us to understand what is happening, because the um, basic functions in life, as we can see in business life or in business world, is the production of goods, exchange of goods and services. In order to understand that broadly, we need to learn about operations management or to study about operations management. Okay? So, that's it. You need to learn it generally. So, this topic or this course or this subject will give you an overview, will give you a general background, a general knowledge of how businesses operate and how they manage to do that. Okay, so let's proceed. So as what I've mentioned, regardless of your field or your major, marketing or finance, you need to have that knowledge or you need to have that information of operations. So let's see in this figure 1.5. It might have a different number in your ebooks. Okay, so in this slide, it's figure 1.5. So it's the business operations overlap. We can see that the three basic functions of business overlap with each other. So na-explain ko na yun sa inyo before how marketing interconnects with operations, how finance interconnects with operations, how marketing interconnects with finance and operations with finance, and vice versa. It's a cycle, okay? Now, let's understand it better and more. Kasi ito talaga yung emphasis ng foundations ng um, operations management. Okay? Ilang beses siya binabalik-balik dito sa sections na ito. So, let's try to look at it once again. Now, let's go to the finance and operations, the overlap of the finance and operations management. So, finance and operations management personnel cooperate by exchanging information and expertise in such activities as the following. First is budgeting, second is economic analysis of investment, and third is provision of funds. So, dito nagkakaroon ng relationship yung finance and operations management. They exchange information and expertise. Now, in budgeting, ano bang meron sa budgeting? Basically, in budgeting, budgets must be periodically prepared to plan financial requirements. So the budgets are needed for buying supplies, buying raw materials, and whatsoever. Ano pa ba dyan yung kailangan i-fund? Okay? Budgets must sometimes be adjusted and performance relative to a budget must be evaluated. So there's an exchange of information and expertise between finance and operations in that aspect, the budgeting. Next is economic analysis of investment proposals. So it's about the evaluation of alternative investments in plant and equipment requirements, inputs from both operations and finance people. So the investments needed for the plant, for the equipment, for these fixed assets must be evaluated effectively. Okay? Must be evaluated in order to plan out, okay, ano yung mga alternatives na dapat. If wala nang resources sa ganito, so saan ba kukuha ng mga ganun? So, those are the things that finance and operations need to relate with. Next is provision of funds, okay? The necessary funding of operations and the amount and timing of funding can be important and even critical when funds are tight. Carefully planning can help avoid cash flow problems. So, hindi maiiwasan sa isang business na magkakaroon ng problems financially, nagkakaroon ng tight budget, yung tinatawag natin dyan. So, it must be, it's important to evaluate, it's important to plan out ahead. in order na hindi magkaroon ng ganitong mga problems or financial problems. So, kapag may mga ganong klaseng problems na na-evaluate, so it's the job of finance and operations to communicate with each other kung anong mga gagawin for the provision of funds. Okay, so yun yung pag-overlap ng finance and ng operations. Now, let's see with regards to marketing. So, sa marketing naman, nag-overlap sila ng operations in such a way that marketing's focus is on selling and promoting the goods or services of an organization. We already tackled about that. That's the job of marketing. To sell, promote, okay, para makaabot yun sa final customers. But what is important in marketing is that the marketing department is responsible for assessing customer wants and needs and for communicating those to operations people. Okay? Mapa short term man or long term yung demands. So, those who study demand and supply are the job of the marketing department. Okay, kailangan nilang alamin ano yung in demand ngayon, and if they already studied about that, they need to communicate that to people in the operations management, okay? So that they will know the timing of producing those goods and the product design, the packaging, what are the preferences of the customers in terms of that product. Okay? Kasi hindi naman si marketing yung gagawa ng product, kundi yung si operations. So, marketing will just communicate to the operations that this is what the customer wants, this is what the customer needs in this period of time. Okay? So, that's the role of marketing in operations. So, one important piece of information na kailangang i-communicate ng marketing sa operations is the manufacturing or service lead time. Okay? So, that's an important. So, ano ba yung lead time? Lead time is the time between ordering a good or service and receiving it. So, kailangan malaman kung yung point of order, the moment when the customer orders, and kung kailan niya ma-receive yung order na yun. The gap between that time is what we call as the lead time. In order to give customers realistic estimates of how long will it take for the products to be produced and makakarating sa kanila. One example is when you order products in Lazada, in Shopee, yung um, yung date ng pag-order mo and the date between that, yung date ng pag-order mo and yung date na marireceive mo yung product, yung in between yan yung lead time. Okay? Kasi during that time, dyan nagkakaroon ng processing, okay, ng transformation of inputs to outputs, okay, the packaging, the processes. Okay. So, yun yung importance ng lead time, which is the role of marketing to communicate that to the operations. Next is, people in every area of business need to appreciate the importance of managing and coordinating operations decisions that affect the supply chain and the matching of supply and demand and how those decisions impact other functions in organization. So, as what I've mentioned, the marketing department is responsible to know, to forecast the demand of the customers in order for the company to match the supply of the company to the demand of the customers. Okay, it's important. It's important na ma-manage yun and ma-coordinate, ma-facilitate na maayos so that there will be no problems that will arise at the end of the customers and on the business. Okay. Now, maliban doon sa finance, yung three business basic functions of the organization, meron pang ibang mga um, supporting functions. Tinatawag natin supporting functions. Hindi lang siya basic function. The basic functions are marketing, finance, and operations. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are supporting functions for the operations. Now, let's take a look at one by one. First is legal. Okay. The legal aspect or the legal function of the business is important for operations in such a way that the operations will know the legalities. Okay? They will be, kung kailangan nila ng consultation on the contracts, ito yung lalapitan nila. Ito yung pupuntahan nila na departamento. Okay. So, contracts between employer and the employees, contracts between the customer and the business, okay? Legal documents, yung mga rules and regulations of the company, para maka-operate na maayos yung operations. Kasi if the operations department doesn't know any legalities, doesn't know any contracts, okay, they might be um, darating sa point na baka makasuhan sila or sila yung kakaso mismo sa business because they do not have that knowledge. So this certain function supports the operation in such a way na merong mga contracts, merong mga agreements, okay, that is being secured. Next is the accounting. Okay, dun tayo sa accounting. So accounting is responsible for the cost of labor, the cost of materials, okay, the overhead cost. They may provide reports, financial reports, okay, so that the operations will have a knowledge on these things, okay. So kung itong si accounting bibigay ng information on the cost of materials, magkakaroon ng maayos na relationship in terms of buying for raw materials, ayan, yung mga kailangan i-secure ng mga equipment for operations. Okay? Next is the personnel or human resources department. They are concerned with recruitment and hiring of people for operations. Not just in operations, pero sa buong company. Okay? So they are responsible for choosing, for selecting qualified employees for the business. So they are responsible to look for qualified factory workers, operations manager. Okay, so they are responsible for that. Another thing, they are also responsible for the wages and the salary of the employees and taking care of the employees and keeping them safe. Okay? So one example is yung hazard pay na tinatawag natin. Example is the frontliners of CRMC. So the frontliners of CRMC are granted, okay, binibigyan sila ng hazard pay because of the nature of their job, which is very risky. Okay. So hindi lang sa hospitals, but also in factories. So, may risk doon in such a way na yung mga chemicals, mga fumes, might be detrimental sa health ng employees. So, there should be, babalik tayo dun sa legal, there should be contracts about it. And at the same time, yung sa contracts na yun, merong wages or may makukuha yung employees, may makiklaim yung employees so that hindi naman sila maagabyado. Okay? Next is the Management Information System. It's concerned with providing management with the information it needs to effectively manage. Let's move on to public relations. So public relations is concerned with the image of the company. So the job of the public relations is to maintain a good image to the public. So if you have a good image of your company, maraming magta-trust na business partners, na mga customers, magpa-patronize ng product mo because of that good image. Okay? So, Kapag ganun, maganda yung nangyayari outside of the company because of that good image, that will also have an effect inside of the company. Kasi kapag may patuloy yung flow ng business, patuloy yung movement ng mga products and services, then patuloy yung magkakaroon ng operations and production inside of the company. Okay? Now, next is career opportunities and professional societies. So we are no longer going to tackle about that. Just see or look up in your ebook Operations Management Manual. Okay, so there are many career opportunities for you future CPAs, and kung hindi nyo naman balak maging CPA, meron pa rin namang mga career opportunities related to operations. Okay, now let's proceed to process management. So process, one of the aspects of operations management I've mentioned earlier is the processes. Okay? It's about transformation of the inputs into outputs. Yung nangyayari doon, the activities, are what we call the processes. Okay? Now, process by definition is one or more actions that transform inputs into outputs. I've mentioned it already. The central role of all management is process management. Okay, so understand this. Take note of this, that the central role of management, of operations management, is process management. How are you going to manage the process? Okay, how are you going to manage the production, the activities going inside the company? Okay, so next is, so in relation to process management, there are three categories of business processes. By the way, when we talk about processes in business per se, there are many sub-processes. Okay? Yung business process, maraming process pa ang nangyayari maliban sa operations. So there are three categories of business processes. Number one is upper management processes. Second, that is just a typo error. Second is operational processes. Third is supporting processes. The upper management processes is concerned for the entire management. Okay? Yung kabuuan, yung pag-manage ng kabuuan ng business. Okay? So, it's an organizational governance and organizational strategy. Nasa level ito ng mga top management. The CEOs, the CFOs. Okay, you will learn more about that in your good governance. Next is operational processes. Okay, dito papasok yung operations. So we have the purchasing, production and or service, marketing, and sales. Supporting processes, yung kanina dito, these are supporting functions, right? So the supporting processes are accounting, human resources, and IT or information technology. Okay, let's move on. Now, what do you mean by business process management or BPM? So, business process management are activities that include process design, process execution, and process monitoring. Okay, let's proceed. In process management, there are two major aspects that we need to understand. So, first is managing a process to meet managing a process to meet demand. And second is process variation. Now, first is what is managing a process to meet demand. So, dito class, ang concern dito is the excess capacity, and yung kulang. So, dito class, in order to manage well, dapat bantayan ng business na hindi sila magkaroon ng excess capacity and at the same time, too little capacity. Because if you have that excess capacity, that is wasteful and costly. Okay? Pag may sobra, ang mangyayari niyan, ipapabenta ng company sa masyadong mura na presyo, and ang mangyayari is that malulugi yung company. Kasi they have to distribute it or else the product will be ano tawag yan, masisira yung product, lalo na kapag pagkain din siya. Doon naman sa too little capacity, dapat iwasan din ng companies ito na ang demand masyadong mataas tapos konti lang yung supply, or ang demand masyadong mataas pero konti lang yung capacity to do that products. Okay? Hindi mo masasatisfy yung customers. Nagkakaroon tayo ngayon ng out of stocks. Dito nangyayari yung out of stocks. And ito yung pinaka-hate ng customers. I personally, I hate out of stocks. Kasi, lalo na kapag in demand, 'di ba? Tapos kulang yung capacity to do it, sayang yung income mo, right? So, dapat ma-manage na maayos yun. Dito papasok yung managing a process to meet demand. So, having the right capacity requires having accurate forecasts of demand. The key here, class, is to have the right capacity. Tama lang, sakto lang. Okay? So, paano mangyayari yon? You need to have accurate forecasts of demand. Ayun, accurate forecasts of demand. And the ability to translate that forecasts into capacity requirements. So, the marketing, that's the job of the marketing, to accurately forecast the demand. So, kapag na-forecast na nila yung demand na yun, the job of the operations is to transform that forecast, okay, into capacity requirements na matatransform yung inputs into outputs, and that will meet the demand of the customers. Okay. Next is process variation. Ito. Kanina, it's managing a process to meet demand. Second aspect of process management is process variation. When we say variation, yung pagkakaiba. Okay? Variation yung pagkakaiba-iba. So, nangyayari yung variation as a result of the management decisions. So, for example, gusto ng management mag-provide ng iba't ibang klase ng products nila. Okay? For example, a car company produces, or the management of that car company wants to cater customers in higher class, in middle class, and in lower class. So, gagawa sila ngayon ng mga kotse na mag-meet doon sa demands ng nasa higher class o yung merong or kayang bumili ng mamahaling mga sasakyan. So, ganun din, para makater nila yung mga market nila sa middle class, gagawa sila ngayon ng kotse na mamimit yung demand ng nasa middle class. Same is true with the lower class. So, doon pa lang nakita natin yung pagkakaiba-iba or nakita natin yung variety, okay, from lower class and middle class to higher class demands. So, dahil merong variation, nagkakaroon din ng process variation. Because you cannot produce different outputs out of the same process. Okay, so hindi ka makaka-produce ng iba't ibang kulay ng damit kung iisa lang yung process mo. Kung iisa lang yung kulay, puti lang yung meron kang fabric. Okay? So, you cannot do that. You need to have a process variation. Now, there are 4 basic sources of variation. Bakit nangyayari yung process variation or mangyayari yung process variation? Number 1 is the variety of goods or services being offered. So, yun na yung sinasabi ko. So, for example, you are a company of detergent. Okay, so detergent. Maliban sa detergent, meron ka pang liquid soap, meron ka pang Domex, ano tawag sa Domex? Meron ka pang panglinis ng CR, many different kinds of soaps. So, hindi lang detergent. Hindi, meron ka pang mga Clorox or chlorine or whatsoever. So, doon pala makikita natin na merong variety of goods na that are being offered by the company. So, because of that, magkakaroon talaga ng process variation. Another is structural variation in demand. Nagkakaroon ng pagkakaiba-iba sa demand depending on the season. So, for example, December. Okay? So, ano bang in demand sa December? Christmas lights, Christmas trees, ham, queso de bola, ganyan. So, nagkakaroon ng variation in demand depending on the season. So, magkakaroon din ng process variation. Next is random variation. Random variation happens kapag, ano lang, natural lang. Nagkakaroon lang talaga ng pagkakaiba-iba depending on what happens in the environment. Next is assignable variation. Assignable variation happens when kapag merong mga defective inputs. So, they have to change it because of these defective inputs or defective mga raw materials or whatsoever. So, nagkakaroon ngayon ng assignable variation. Now, before we proceed, here's a quick question for everyone. So, get a sheet of paper or a notebook and a pen and answer this question. What is the downside of or disadvantages of process variation? Again, get a sheet of paper, not on your gadget, hindi sa phones ninyo, kundi kukuha kayo ng papel at saka ng ballpen or notebook at saka ng ballpen para sagutin itong question na ito. Now, you may use your ebooks to answer but do not copy-paste from the book. Answer in your own words. So, what you're going to do is to read and understand that section. Ano ba yung mga downside ng process variation? Ano ba yung disadvantages niya? And try to understand those statements. Saka kayo magsasagot ngayon sa papel ninyo or sa notebook ninyo. I will give you 5 minutes. Now, after 5 minutes, you have to submit your answers by capturing a photo of your written answers. Okay? Picturean nyo ngayon yung sinagutan ninyo sa papel or sa notebook. Lagyan nyo ng pangalan. Don't forget to write your name, your subject, and the date. Okay? So, one paragraph lang of answering that question. And then send it in my FB account through Messenger. Okay? So,